He walked in to defend the system, but ended up unable to defend even himself. Black civil rights attorney Andre Miller had pressed his shirt with care that morning, tightened his tie perfectly to the collar, and filled his leather briefcase with legal files. Hidden inside his lapel, almost invisible, was a tiny microphone. As he walked toward the Midtown NYPD precinct, his posture was clear, professional, composed, but alert. Because in the justice system, Andre had long learned that he wasn't just defending his clients. He was constantly defending his own presence, too. That day, he was there to visit his client, Tyrone Wallace, arrested the night before. Wallace had been slammed to the ground by 3 white officers at the entrance of his apartment building for alleged non-compliance. Andre had taken the case and came prepared, but the moment he stepped toward the entrance, he knew something was off. The officer at the desk glanced at his ID, then murmured something into his radio. Minutes later, 3 more officers entered the lobby. Andre politely asked why he was being held up, but received only one response. "Mr. Miller, we're going to take you to a room." Standard procedure. His blazer was removed. He was pressed against the wall. The precinct where he'd come as an attorney was now treating him like a criminal. His eyes, first full of disbelief, turned cold, but his voice remained measured. "I'm an attorney. I'm here to see my client. That's a constitutional right." The officer rolled his eyes with an audible scoff. Yeah, you're a lawyer. We'll check on that. For now, sit tight." The metal door slammed shut behind him. Andre was alone. The room? An interrogation cell. And this time, the suspect's chair was meant for him. What no one noticed, however, was the microphone stitched inside his jacket. It was live, recording every insult, every threat, and every word. This wasn't just the wrongful detention of an attorney. This was a corrupt system finally being documented from the inside. The flickering fluorescent light buzzed above as Andre sat at the metal table, palms flat, eyes closed, breathing slow. One truth was becoming clearer by the minute. Today wasn't just about defending his client. He would have to defend himself. The door creaked open. 3 white officers walked in. One sat across from him while the other 2 flanked the room, arms crossed. There was no curiosity in their eyes, only judgment. "Mr. Miller, our system shows your access card was used last night. Care to explain who you met with inside?" Andre frowned. "I arrived this morning. If my card was used, someone cloned it. Instead of finding the real problem, you're interrogating me?" One of the officers chuckled. Another leaned forward. "First time in a holding cell, counselor?" Andre leaned back in his chair. Sweat gathered beneath his jacket, but his voice was sharp. "Not my first. And like every time before, being a black man is all the probable cause you need, isn't it?" One of them muttered under his breath. "He takes himself too seriously, always putting on a show." But the microphone in Andre's lapel was still live. That comment, and everything else, was being recorded remotely by his assistant, Sylvia. She had already backed up the files and forwarded them to legal oversight groups. Outside, media outlets were gathering in the precinct lobby. Sylvia had leaked the tip. Civil rights organizations were mobilizing. Andre might have been locked in, but he wasn't alone. A tiny microphone had become his most powerful witness. And this wasn't just a detainment anymore. It was a courtroom case in the making. In this courtroom, it wasn't just the accused on trial, so was the system itself. Civil rights attorney Andre Miller, black, sharply dressed, walked into the courtroom to the blinding flash of media cameras. Reporters shouted questions. Activists chanted outside, and the packed gallery made one thing clear. This wasn't just another trial. It was a reckoning. The jury sat in their seats. At the defense table, 3 white officers, Chief Carter, Detective Lynch, and Officer Davis. Leading the prosecution was Alyssa Monroe, a fierce and respected black prosecutor known for taking on cases against the NYPD. She stood tall in her black blazer, ready for battle. Judge Robert Kessler, old, white, and deeply tied to the NYPD, adjusted his robe and cleared his throat. His voice was stern, his face unreadable. "Ms. Monroe, please state your claim." Alyssa rose. Her eyes didn't waver from the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we are not just examining misconduct by a few officers. We are questioning who the law truly protects. My client entered that precinct as a representative of justice, but he was judged by the color of his skin, not the content of his credentials." A murmur rippled through the room. A few jurors paused their notes. Then the evidence was played, audio from the hidden microphone in Andre's suit. One chilling line echoed through the courtroom. "That loudmouth black lawyer needs to be taught a lesson." Judge Kessler lowered his glasses and turned slightly, but made no comment. When Andre was called to the stand, he paused briefly. Not out of fear, just fatigue. At the microphone, He spoke with calm clarity. I came to represent my client. But in that room, my ID, my degree, none of it mattered. All they saw was what I was, not who I am. And in that moment, the courtroom fell silent. Because truth didn't need a microphone to be loud. This time, it was Sylvia Thomas who took the stand, Andre's assistant. 27, black, and a tech specialist. She adjusted the mic, holding a USB drive in her hand. This is a cloud backup of the recordings made by Attorney Miller's lapel mic. The footage contains direct audio of officers making racial slurs, violating protocol, and unlawfully detaining him. The defense attorney jumped up. These recordings are inadmissible. My clients had a reasonable expectation of privacy. Prosecutor Monroe fired back. Privacy? You unlawfully detained a lawyer and verbally abused him based on race, and now you want to talk about privacy? Judge Kessler tapped his gavel slowly, avoiding Sylvia's gaze. Stick to technical details, please. Sylvia calmly played the second clip. Let the lawyer wait. He'll learn this isn't his courtroom. So he's got degrees? This place runs on our rules. Andre sat quietly at the plaintiff's table. Not angry, just resigned, because none of it shocked him anymore. At the end of the session, Monroe returned to the podium, holding one final document. This case is not just about Mr. Miller. It's about all of us. If the law bends for one skin color and breaks against another, then justice isn't justice at all. The jurors had stopped writing. They were listening. And for the first time, the silence in the courtroom wasn't meant to suppress. It was the sound of people waking up. When the jury returned to the courtroom, everyone held their breath. Andre Miller sat in the back row, upright, not as a lawyer, not even as a defendant, but as a man who had finally been judged for who he truly was. Now, it was the jury's turn to speak. The foreperson stood. She held the verdict slip in her hand, eyes briefly shifting toward the defendant's table where the white officers sat. Then, she turned to face the judge. Your Honor, the jury has reached a unanimous verdict. On the charges of misconduct, unlawful detention, and racial discrimination, the defendants are found guilty. There was no applause, just a quiet wave of collective exhale, like justice had spoken without needing to raise its voice. Judge Kessler slowly set down his gavel. He removed his glasses, looked directly at Andre, and paused for a long moment. Then he muttered, "The court recommends an official written apology be issued to Attorney Andre Miller. This session is adjourned." Andre stood. For the first time, the eyes around him didn't look at him as a troublemaker. They looked at him like a man who had endured, and won. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Microphones extended in his path. But Andre simply said, "They tried to silence me. But it wasn't my voice that collapsed. It was the system." He stepped down the courthouse steps. The sun was beginning to set, but something inside him had just begun to rise again. This case would no longer be remembered as just one man's fight. It would be remembered as a trial for all those who were ever silenced.